Hey there, and it is Ion Franchising Day with my friend Andrea Hoffer. And Andrea is the founder of AHA Talent Experts. This episode sponsored by SEO Samba. Empower your franchise with predictable results and AI-driven marketing.
Coming up on this episode.
You're going to solve everybody's problems today, so thank you for being here.
Right now, we're seeing a huge shift in the workplace, and a lot has to do with AI.
We have to determine as employers, what is the temperament of this person that you really want? Now, Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lance. I'm happy to be here.
I am so happy to have you because as a talent expert, everybody in America seems to still be complaining if they own a business, I can't find people, I can't retain people, I don't know what's going on, nobody wants to work anymore. So what do you say to that? And you're going to solve everybody's problems today. So thank you for being here.
I will try my best. Sometimes it's hard for me to believe that they can't find any good people because I'm contacted all day long by some great candidates who have just been laid off or looking for work. So it's really just about connecting the right people with the right people.
Yeah.
And often they do know the right people, they just don't realize they're in their universe. So depending upon the industry and the level, I have found amazing candidates for people who have been connected to the hiring manager on LinkedIn for years and even went for coffee with them, a couple of years before, but they just, we meet so many people. We need a way to figure out how to reach out to our network when we're looking for a specific person. So when it comes to the professional and executive level, LinkedIn is one of the best. It's table stakes. It's right there for you to take. I always say be active on LinkedIn, even if you're not currently hiring, just so that your future employees see you as a thought leader in your industry, and that's how you're going to be able to easily connect with them when you do need them.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I want to jump into the opposite of this. Obviously I said business owners are complaining. I heard that. I had a business, I had a restaurant in 2007, and I'll never forget people asking me, especially other restaurant owners, saying, where did you find these people? And I used to always joke, and it was true though, that I said, yes, I did. And you did what? And it's like, I found these people. I don't wait around and hope and pray that somebody's going to cross my threshold if I'm in a brick and mortar business. Obviously, if you're in a, there might be people that walk into an office and drop off a resume and you go, oh my gosh, they're perfect. But let's talk about it this way. What are the top 3 mistakes that you see business owners making with hiring?
The first big mistake is they don't know what they need. They think they do. They might even have a position title, but they haven't thought through what are the outcomes from this position that they need in order to get a good return on filling the role, and to know whether the person is doing a good job and how to coach them to do what they want. And I see this all the time. We need such and such role filled, and then when I ask, well, what are the outcomes you want to see in 90 days from this person, I often see them stall and they freeze. They don't know how to answer that. And if you can't answer that, or how this person's going to fit in their culture, what the day-to-day core values are of the culture, and what that truly looks like in the day-to-day, then they're not going to be able to go to the next step. They won't be able to find the people that you were talking about because they won't know how to recognize them.
Andrea, it sounds like I love to equate everything to sports. If it's football we're talking about, if you already have the quarterback, that's the starting quarterback, but now you need linemen, you need receivers, you need a kicker, you need special teams. These are sort of designated or determined roles. And really that's what you're talking about, is what is the role? What is the level of responsibility? Who do they report to? And generally speaking, what talent do they need? What do they need on their resume in order for them to be successful, right?
Well, and have they done anything similar? So right now we're seeing a huge shift in the workplace, and a lot has to do with AI, but positions are changing, the needs for the positions are changing. And so what is it, the outcome that you actually need, and what skills and experience does the person truly need in order to accomplish those outcomes? So I like to find out more about what they've accomplished in their previous position than just, do they have this very specific title they were supposed to have for 7 years before we would consider them? Because then you're narrowing your pool down a lot, and you're counting on that they're actually going to call their title or how they describe their experience the way you see it, when
Yes.
it could be completely something different.
So what was the second mistake? Let's move on to the second one.
The second is, how are you going to reach these candidates? And I'm starting to actually talk a little bit to our DREAM framework. So D in DREAM is define. So we talked a little bit about define. And R is reach. And so often people will just throw a job posting on Indeed. If they didn't do the define stage correctly, I often will see them just copy another job posting they like. Or the newest mistake I see is going to ChatGPT and just saying, here's the title, write me a job posting. That's going to get a lot of people, without telling ChatGPT really more details that it needs to do a true job posting. But who are you reaching out to? Are you going into your network and finding the different people? Are you active on social media? Not just when, like I said, not just when you're hiring, but prior to that, are you cultivating a candidate pool, getting a following, so you have people who, when they see you post, are like, oh, I wasn't looking for a job, but I would love to learn more because I love what you share. You are such a contributor to our industry. And it's even the same for hourly roles. We work a lot with franchises, and we do a lot of hourly roles, as you were talking about earlier, Lance. It's not just putting a job posting. It's still talking with the candidate and doing different assessments. And I don't mean assessments where they, some assessments work well, but different ways to learn what is important to them, to see if this is the right role for them and the right culture. Don't just say we're looking for somebody team-oriented. What does a team-oriented workforce look like for you in your business? And then when you're talking with candidates, ask them what teamwork means to them and see if that matches up with what your true definition is.
And so many candidates, this is going to sound so bad, but it's true. So many candidates just tell you, they're just full of crap, and they tell you what they know you want to hear in order for them to get hired.
Right. Well, I always say, if you're hearing the same or similar responses over and over again to your interview questions from different candidates, then your questions are bad.
Yeah.
If you have good interview questions, you should be hearing completely different responses from every candidate, ones that they lived through and couldn't get off the internet or from AI.
Yeah, good point. And what about the third mistake, would you say, in hiring that you see people making?
Well, it really does run, it follows through with the interviewing. People often will fall back on asking very general and hypothetical interview questions when they're interviewing candidates. And it's because they've never been taught the correct way to interview. And they feel like if they had a good conversation and there was some sort of chemistry between them, this is going to be somebody great, right? And then they hire the person, and they show up, and they're completely different than what they expected. So I'm a strong believer in structured interviews and in creating those interview questions in a way that gets to the heart of what the past experience and behavior is like. And I read somewhere once that your power phrase in the interview makes a big difference. So our power phrase is specific example, asking for a specific example and relate it to what you need for the job. And if you're doing that, then you're going to hear different responses, like I said earlier, from each candidate, because not everybody has the same experience. It can be as simple as, could you share a specific example of a time you had a really difficult customer?
Yeah.
Now,
and how did that make you feel?
Yeah. Well, and the big mistake would be asking, and how did you resolve it? Or how did you take care of that? You don't want to give away the answer.
Yeah.
So instead, you want to, I say, leave it hanging. See the people who did solve or learn something from that experience is going to share it with you. The ones who had problems and had to bring somebody else or blames the customer for it, they're going to share that as well. But if you tell me how it was resolved, or you ask them that, then they're going to, they'll come up with a way of resolving it.
So I have a sneaky story of how I was able to hire effectively. I learned in the restaurant business that I had to really surprise people in the interview, to your point, by not asking the same old questions. But I took it a step further, is I gave them a surprise scenario they didn't expect to even walk into. I scheduled an interview during a peak period in the restaurant when we were really busy. And Megan, who was one of my key employees, I had Megan greet the guy that I was interviewing, and it was a second interview, and we were busy. And Megan said, Lance is super busy. He's stuck in the back. So I stayed in the back doing stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And Megan it was her job to actually interview him while she was completing tasks at the same time. Will this guy get frustrated? Because at the end of the day, in the restaurant business, in the heat of the battle, we don't know what's coming at us. So this is really a real life scenario to see how he's going to handle the pressure and stress of, where is Lance? Why am I not getting interviewed by him? Wow, this place is busy. And the guy got a little bit irritated, but at some point I came out and I said, hey, congratulations, you passed the interview, and et cetera, you're hired, or whatever it might have been. And he was like blown away, and he was a really good employee. But there was a point where we have to determine as employers, what is the temperament of this person that you really want? How mad should somebody get that I was supposed to be interviewing him? I'm 20 minutes late, and does that matter? But anyway, let's talk about your dream framework. As an expert in hiring, you write and speak about your dream framework that you've created. So, and that's a dream framework for building a team. Give us an overview of the framework and talk about how it helps businesses hire.
Okay, so each letter stands for a stage. There are 5 stages. So DREAM. The D starts with define. And that's where we will work with clients to help them to really define what their culture is, what does it show up like on a day-to-day basis, who's a good fit for that culture, and also who's a good fit for the role that they need and the outcomes that they need from that role. And then we start to dig in a little bit more of where we can find these people. Sometimes when they have some really great employees, we're like, well, let's ask them, where do they hang out? Where do they hang out on social media? And where do they hang out in real life, as you might say? Because those are places we can target people with similar interests and likes. And so once the defined stage is defined and we're ready to go, then we build the reach strategy. And that's where we're talking about employer branding and recruitment marketing. A lot of people don't really even know those buzzwords or what they even mean or the difference. And recruitment marketing is what most people do at a bare minimum. Even just putting a job posting out could be, is considered recruitment marketing. That's when you're just marketing one specific role. Employer branding is taking that culture and and showing it to the world. It's doing more about it. It's even bringing the core values, the culture into the job posting, so that when somebody sees the job posting, they get a good feel for what it's like to work there and what you're all about. And so that starts the reach phase. Next, we're in engaged, which is the E, and that is all about the candidate experience. And the candidate experience, I feel most people tend to fall down there. And that's where you want to keep constant communication with the candidate. We like to make sure our candidates are communicated in some way with every 3 days while they're still in the process. And that includes when they apply. So within the first 3 days, and we actually try to do it within 24 hours, but our candidate promise is 3 business days, that they're receiving some sort of email. I think one of our first emails is an automated response that says, hey, good news, we got your resume or we got your application. Yes, we are an automated response, but you know that the right people got it. Just some kind of comforting thing. And then, of course, we're following up within 3 days of that. But that engagement piece, that candidate experience, all the way through to either disqualification or to offer, that is extremely important. That's where your reputation is being built as an employer. Don't think people don't talk about their experience. They do, and it will affect your hiring results during that search and going forward if you don't treat them well. And one way to do that is to have a very good software system. Applicant tracking systems, ATSs, if you're doing regular hiring, is one of the best ways to keep on top of candidate communication. Then the next one, of course, is assess. And that's where we work with our clients on how to interview effectively. And we customize the questions to help them figure out, will this person fit in my organizational culture, and will they be able to do the job effectively and be happy? And lately we've been focusing a lot on what's called locus of control. And I think that's very important for all roles, but it's definitely something to look at when you're talking about entry-level hourly positions. And you can ask questions, even as simple, even if they've never had a job before. You could say, could you share a specific example of a time when you had some sort of challenge, something that was really difficult, and it just seemed like the whole world was against you? And just that simple question, and then of course you dig in a little bit more as they share the story. It gives you a feel for, do they feel like they have control of their life and their outcomes and they can make a difference? Or are they more kind of what's called like an external locus of control, and everything, they don't really have much control, everything comes at them. And that gives you a good feel. If you have somebody in a customer service position, probably want a strong internal locus of control. I want them to feel like they're empowered to make this customer happy, or to solve a problem that they've not seen before. And then the last one, which also people tend to fall down on because they think, oh, I landed this great person, they're going to make everything great for our organization, and I can step away. Well, yes and no. It depends on their level of experience, but you still need to inspire and motivate them. So the M is for motivate, and that's not just in the first 60 days, that's ongoing, always checking in. How are things going? Is there any resource you need, something I can help you with to make your job easier? Or do you have any new ideas? Is there something new you want to gain experience in? It's a huge part of retaining that talent that you work so hard to find.
Andrea, how'd you get into becoming a talent expert?
Oh,
Where did your talent come from?
Where did my talent come from? So I started working on college campuses. My original graduate degree is in something called college student personnel work, which is a combination of public administration, I'd say, and psychology, educational psychology. The goal is working on a college campus in a role that helps students to build leadership skills and exceed their potential, basically setting them up for success. And so the first 15, 17 years of my career, I did that. And then I, at some point, became known as someone good in business. I never thought about business before, but there were revenue generating units on campus, and they started putting me in charge of them, and I tended to be good at it. And I was supervising all sorts of student teams, and I was using, not just supervising them as an employer, but also in engaging them and using what I've learned in my higher ed studies to help them be leaders. So I was kind of combining the two there. And I eventually went back to school and got my MBA and left and ended up opening a Massage Envy spa, which was a franchise. It was one of the earlier...
Well, that's how you got into franchise hiring.
Right.
You figured,
so then, yeah.
I might as well help everybody with this.
Yeah, no. So what happened, and yes, I was on a lot of searches when I was part of the college campus and did a lot of roles, executive and hourly. But one of the things that helped me a great deal when I opened my spa was that, unlike a lot of the other franchisees who were only used to a corporate experience and hiring and managing executive level teams, I had the bulk of my experience hiring and managing people who were fairly new to the workplace. And also doing it in a way where coaching was a big aspect of it. Yeah. So it wasn't just about getting the job done. It was also about engaging and helping to develop the people in the roles.
Yeah.
So that helped me a lot. But I will say, and I talk about this, when I first opened my spa, everything I knew and learned went out the window because I became so engrossed in the day-to-day and keeping the doors open and where do I market and all the things like a new business. And it was 2006, by the way, so things were a little challenging. So I just hired whoever walked in my door. They'd walk in the door and say, I see you have a help wanted sign. I say, great, sell me this pen. And they're like, it can write? Great, you're hired. Can you start?
Classic sell me this pen.
I know. It's been used for years. I never use it now, but back then. And then after about 2 years, I said, what am I doing? My front desk stays for like 3 months and leaves, and I'm just constant this thing, and I know the right way to hire. Why am I doing what everybody else does? So I took a step back and did some research on some best practices with hiring and kind of just came up with my own formula. One was doing group interviews, which was a huge help for us. And implemented these new strategies, and they really worked to the point where the regional for my franchise asked me to do a presentation to all the South Florida franchisees on what I was doing.
Yeah, give us the highlights of group interviews and why they're so effective.
Okay. So when we were doing group interviews in Massage Envy, and I often I'll still teach them and sometimes even still conduct them for my clients. It's a 60 to 90 minute program. And what we did was when somebody applied for the job, say it was front desk, we did a lot of group interviews for front desk. We would do them regularly even if we didn't have an opening, because that way, say we had 7 or 8 people and maybe nobody was great or one person was great, I'm going to find a spot for that one great person. But in order to be invited to the group interview, we would send them our core values and we would ask them, pick one or two of these core values and just send us a couple of sentences of why this resonates with you. Didn't have to be, a beautiful paper. We just wanted to know they were taking our core values seriously. We would get some great responses, and then they'd get invited to the group interview. The way I did it was I held them at the local coffee shop. It was a Panera's. And because this was a sales position, sales and customer service, but we found that the reason we kept losing people was because they hated sales. So we made sure our process was heavily sales focused. Yeah. One of the things I did was I would not immediately put anything up of where we are, right? Like, so I would just I might go a little early, but I would watch as people would walk in and look for where they're supposed to be, because there'd be no signage or anything. And it was really interesting to see the people who hung back, and then the people who would notice other people looking and then get together and start chatting. Yeah. So it just gave me kind of an observation right from the beginning. And then the program, we put them through different exercises, working together. I'm not going to go into every single detail, but it gave us a feel for how they work as a team, how they listen to each other, and how they felt about learning and using sales techniques.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great stuff. So give me some sort of quick wins that you've made for clients when it comes to improving their hiring results.
I'll tell you, the quick win I keep seeing over and over again is they'll say, like you mentioned earlier, I can't find anybody, nobody's applying for our ads. And then we go into their database, and sometimes that database is just an email box on their email. That drives me crazy. But we'll go in and clean it up. And, I'm working with a client right now where they're like, oh, whatever you did for that surge of candidates, can you do, let's do that. What were the ads that you did? I'm like, all I did was go into your database and engage. Part of our steps, we reached out to those hundreds of candidates that have been sitting there for 6 months with nobody contacting them.
Unbelievable. So much for a system, right?
Yeah. So I'm all about process. And, if you are hiring regularly, even if you're just hiring for one role, have some sort of easy to follow process where you're making sure none of your candidates are falling through the cracks and that they're all going through every step. If you're a retail establishment and you have an online posting that's where all candidates come through, and somebody walks through your door, even if they seem great, have them sit down right there, give them the QR code, fill out that application right there and then, so that they're going through every step and you have them in the database. And that's probably one of the best quick, easy wins I could think of.
That makes perfect sense as well. So let's talk about, what are your top 3 tips when it comes to interviewing for frontline positions?
So I already started to share earlier. The first one is try to make it as conversational as possible. Years and years ago, the common practice was, and I feel like it's still today, but make it seem like that, get them scared, make it seem like there's a spotlight on them, they have no idea what's coming at them, and that's how we're going to get the most sincere response. Well, that's not true. I don't believe it's true. Make it seem like a conversation, but there's still structure to it. And one way to do that is to start your questions in a conversational way. Like, could you share? Instead of tell me or give me. Just by adding that phrase, it somewhere in the back of the candidate's mind, it gives them a feel of like, this is more of a two-way street and I'm not being put on the spot. The next, what I keep, I've mentioned before about the power phrase, ask for a specific example. So 90% of your questions, you want to be asking for a specific example that then ties back to something related to the job. I am not a fan of hypothetical questions. I'm not even a fan of problem-solving questions on the spot. I think it's harder to tie that back to what they can actually do.
Gotcha.
So I more would like to ask about, could you share a specific example of a time when you had to learn a new software in order to do your job? And then just leave it there and see what they say. If they haven't had a job before, then just say when you had to learn a new software. For school, they probably had to at some point. And then they'll walk you through what they did to learn it. And if they don't, you ask prompting questions. Well, what happened next? How did that work for you? But don't ask, well, what did you do so that you were an expert at it? Like, you don't want to give too much away. They might share they're still learning, and that's okay. But what are they doing? A mistake. I love asking, could you share a specific example of a time you made a mistake at work that affected others? And just leave it there. Not how they resolved it, but they'll hopefully share that if it was resolved.
Andrea, I put real milk in somebody's latte when they wanted almond milk.
I'm actually seeing a lot of those kind of responses for we're working with Nothing Bundt Cakes franchisee right now, and we're doing one-way video interviews, which I actually highly recommend for most roles, but especially for hourly. And it's most of them, because of the age group, but even when you're talking people my age, like in their 50s and 60s, most of them have a smartphone, and instead of jumping right to a phone screen, ask them, what was the biggest mistake you made that they can do on their own time on their phone, and they send that to you, and it's amazing the things you learn from that. We've given people more of an opportunity to be considered for position from their video interview that we never would have considered just based on their resume.
Andrea, AI-driven hiring solutions. Everybody's talking about AI. Tell us a little bit about how you encourage people to engage with that.
Love the question. I am fascinated by AI, but before I say some areas that I encourage you to use AI in hiring, I do want to mention I am still a little concerned about using AI as a first round of screening of resumes without a human in that loop. What I love using AI for is taking the information that you've gathered or that you've shared about who can be successful in your role and at your organization, and feeding it into an AI, and then asking it to create a job posting. Now, I'm going to actually, if you don't mind, share with your audience a free tool that we have.
Great.
We have a job posting wizard, and if you go to jobpostingwizard.com, it will bring you right to the chat. You don't have to sign in. Well, you do need to sign into ChatGPT, but I won't have your information. So you can use it for free, and it has my job posting formula that we've been using for over a decade. It's a certain structure baked into it. So you just answer the job posting wizard's questions, which are at least probably 40% of the questions that we typically ask when we do our define stage and do our intake with a client. And then it will create for you a job posting that I'm going to go out on a limb and almost guarantee will be at least 80% better than what you've done before. But you still need to check it for accuracy, because as we all know, AI sometimes can have a mind of its own. So my tip with AI is use it to take your unstructured data, which is all your thoughts about who was great in your role in the past, tell it stories. It doesn't have to be in any kind of format. You're just sharing with it all your things, and it will then pull it together, and you can say, okay, do this job posting. I also need to know what are 3 to 5 specific observable behaviors that I should see in somebody successful in this role? Or what are 3 to 5 outcomes I should see from somebody in the first 60, 90, 120 days from somebody who's successful in this role? Or what will be a red flag for, that I'll see in the first 30 days? So it will help you to, all this information, but if you feed it into the AI and you give it specific instructions to help you to take that unstructured data and put it into a usable format for you, you'll be amazed at how that will help you in hiring.
Yeah, you get a better result that way. Mm-hmm. Well, you've been awesome. Any final thought, final words of wisdom for those listening?
I would just say put some sort of structure and process to your hiring. Don't just do it from the hip, as I know I've done it. It's the easiest thing to do sometimes, but in the long run, it's going to cost you a lot more money.
I was going to say it's expensive.
And aggravation.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Lance. I've enjoyed speaking with you.
Likewise. My pleasure.
If you're ready to talk about franchise opportunities, hit the link below to schedule a call. My services are free, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.